Hey everyone, well, I am here at the Capitol in the early morning hours of Wednesday in an all-night bonanza in which the Republicans are trying to shove through their reconciliation package. Now, I want to break down what is happening inside the Capitol right now. As you all know, they scheduled for the Rules Committee to begin debate on this package at 1 a.m. So they've been at it all night. And I am here to offer amendments, to fight back. Democrats are inside this building right now fighting this bill. And what is insane is that for hours, the Republicans have been debating that this was an emergency, so they had to have this all-night hearing. And then their own members didn't show up for the rules debate. Literally. Like a bunch of them aren't even in the room. But I want to break down what is actually inside this bill, because the bill is even worse than we thought it was going to be. And in fact, because they were still cutting last minute deals up until the end, many of the provisions hadn't even been finalized until the Rules Committee gavelled in. And we didn't get a CBO score on it until late into the night. So let me break it down. I'm going to give you 5 ABCs. First of all, it gives a massive permanent tax breaks to the ultra wealthy and to corporations by re-upping the 2017 tax cuts that put our country on a path to a massive deficit spend just last time. And again, they're going to do it again. But this time, the CBO told us late last night that the wealthiest people in this country are going to see their income go up by 4%, while the poorest people in this country are going to see their income go down by 4%. So this is literally a redistribution of wealth from the poorest Americans to the richest Americans. Secondly, there are billions of dollars in giveaways and kickbacks to corporations and buddies of the president and their friends. It includes billions of dollars in contracts for defense spending, for a border wall, for private prisons, for oil and gas companies, doing away with royalties, as well as huge spends on big tech and deregulation. These are all kickbacks for their buddies, and I'm sure you all know who. The third is cuts. There are massive cuts in this bill, including to Medicaid, even more than they anticipated, according to the CBO. We're talking over $690 billion in cuts to Medicaid alone, and that does not include the cuts to the Affordable Care Act and the massive increase in spending that's going to have to be taken up by states to cover many uninsured people. It also cuts food assistance to millions of Americans. It would cut school lunch programs, and it would cut Pell Grants and other educational supplements that make it possible for people to go to school. Fourth, it decimates protections for the environment. It opens huge swaths of land to oil and gas drilling, to mining. It does away with key protections in the judiciary for judicial review. It does away with NEPA. It eviscerates funding for tax incentives and climate programs that came out of the IRA. It is one of the worst bills in American history for the environment. It also decimates protections for federal workers. It would make federal workers at will, and it would charge a premium on their retirements, cutting their pay across the board. So basically penalizing our federal employees. It also guts the CFPB, which means that consumer finance protections are also being gutted in this bill. Fifth, it eviscerates the federal budget. I have never heard such ridiculous arguments in my life. Inside this building right now, Republicans are trying to argue that the CBO happens to be wrong sometimes, and therefore their estimates that this bill is going to blow a hole through the deficit by $3.8 trillion, they're arguing can't possibly be right. My friends, it is correct. And in fact, not only is this a huge increase in the deficit, this is the largest increase in deficit spending since the 1790s for this country. And if you look at the tables, what you will see is not only does it massively increase deficit spending, it transfers billions of dollars in costs to the states by cuts to royalties, Medicaid transfers, and food assistance transfers. And so it's not only hitting the federal budget, it's also going to hit our state budgets. This bill is a national disgrace, and they're inside this building trying to pass it in the dark of night, and we are fighting them every step of the way.